Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. We have just had news that there are going to be some nerfs coming this week, and we want to take a look at what they are. They've been teased, what cards are getting changed, a few buffs and a few nerfs here. We have the full list of cards here. Zoom out a bit. So these are all the nerfs. Posit getting nerfed, period, Disco Mall, Feast and Famine, Steno, and Hope of Calphalas. So Paladin, obviously been very strong recently, and they're getting severely hit by the nerf bat. Two of their strongest cards getting nerfed, as well as Feast and Famine for the off-board damage that was represented with the Wind Fury weapon. Alright, let's talk about Posit first. This card is pretty good in most decks it features in. On curve, it's a really strong play. Don't know if it really needed a nerf. Maybe this is like a bit reminiscent of the school teacher nerf, where the card was maybe a bit too strong. Could talk about Astalor in the same vein of that, actually, as a card that's a little bit too strong as a neutral option. So I think probably the nerf for this is going to be similar to school teacher, and it's going to be a stat change. I can't imagine the mana cost is changing on this to 5. That would be a bit ridiculous. You could maybe say the bots change their stats to 2/2 or something as well. But I think more likely it's going to just drop an attack. It could drop a health, but then it's like easier to actually summon the bots with it, so it becomes a bit weird whether it's actually a nerf or not. So I think it's more likely going to be like a 4/4 or a 3/4 at a push, but probably just a 4/4 to bring it in line with school teacher. Maybe they could make it a 4/3 also. I think that sort of makes some sense. Next we have the Puree. Now this is a card that's got extremely strong recently with Paladin's tier 1 status. This card has gone from holding the class afloat a little bit to make Pure Paladin viable to being the premier card in the deck, in a tier 1 deck. And they're going to nerf it, and I think that's reasonable. It is a bit ridiculous how much value this card can provide in a deck which has a lot of tempo and light rays which cost 0 mana. So what is the change this going to be? I don't think they're going to change the text on it, so it has to be mana or stat change. Could mean it doesn't get taunt anymore. That is a reasonable change to make it less defensive. But probably going to see like a stat change, or more likely a mana change to 6 mana. Could severely also nerf the stats to like a 3/4 or something, so it's not such a good tempo play on turn 5. Those are basically the options. I think most likely it's going to be mana though. Next we've got Disco Mall. This card is really strong if you have it in your mulligan. And it's just a 2 mana 2/2 weapon that gives you better than Blessing of Kings extremely easily. And if you get really greedy with it, it can be like +10/+10 or more quite often. And it's just a little bit too ridiculous for an early game card. So I imagine we're going to see a nerf to this on either making it so its baseline is not +1/+1, so it slows it down a bit, similar to how they nerfed the Warlock location in the past. Give a random friendly minion +1/+1, is remove this text to something else that implies the effect. It might be a bit difficult to do that. Other changes they could do, maybe make it 3 mana. 3 mana 2/2 is a bit harsh though for a weapon. It really makes it quite bad, I think, in terms of initial tempo. So maybe they buff it to 3/2 as well. We'll see. Feast and Famine also getting nerfed. Kind of feel like with these two cards getting nerfed, if the nerfs are harsh enough, which mana changes tend to be, especially with a 2 mana weapon, going to a 3 mana weapon, if that's what it's going to be, would be a pretty harsh nerf. I don't know if this nerf's necessary as well. Like if you nerf how strong the the early game and mid game is of the pure Paladin, I don't feel like you need to also nerf the finisher potential as well. Maybe it turns out you do, but I feel like you should just do a patch with these changes potentially. And if it's still a problem, then you nerf the Feast and Famine as well later. But to nerf all these free cards in one patch seems a little excessive to me. But what are the changes they're going to make to this? Give your hero +3 attack this turn, and lifesteal. They can make it 2 attack. It's reasonable. Or they increase the mana. That's the only 2 things they can do, I think. Changing stuff like the mana first really doesn't have any real applications for how it's being used right now. So +2 attack this turn for 1 mana severely nerfs the Wind Fury damage. 2 mana, you're not going to be facing down the burst potential as quickly. Like turn 7, easy to play the weapon plus this on the same turn. So whatever those changes, but again, I don't think like it's necessary to nerf this as well as the other ones. I think pure Paladin would end up in a reasonable spot with just these 2 changes. Next we have Lady Steno getting nerfed finally. I talked about this in another video that I wanted this card to get nerfed and it didn't, and then they printed more support for it and now it's just even more toxic than it was before somehow. Hopefully they gut this card so decks that entirely rely on it, like Spell Demon Hunter, don't exist anymore, because that deck is really not a healthy one, I think, for the state of the game. So what can they do? The change I suggested was instead of lowest health enemy, it's lowest health minion. So in terms of tempo on board, it still works as before, but you can't push face with it. Maybe that makes the card unplayable. Fine by me. Other changes, you can make it 1 attack, or you can increase the mana. I think that's realistically all you can do. So maybe 4 mana for Steno, 1 attack Steno, or fundamentally change how Steno works and maybe make it can't go face. All of them. There is some implications here for the state of the meta if you do nerf the burst and overall viability of Paladin, and you nerf Steno into unplayability, and that maybe Priest gets a bit too strong, and that would be terrible for the game, I think, because anytime Control Priest is like the best deck, the game just doesn't feel very good. Next we have Hope of Kel'Thuzad for Hunter. Hunter has been doing pretty well recently with their hybrid style class, with the big beasts, the wild seeds and all that stuff. With the introduction of the Hound that has lifesteal and cleave, the deck's got a lot better, and this is actually one of the better cards in it now, mainly because it boosts the Hound up to like 5 attack, which gives you a huge lifesteal and board clear potential. I don't know if that deck really needed to be nerfed though. Sure, it's decent by the stats right now, but in terms of playing it and playing against it, it doesn't feel particularly crazy good. It's just like fine as a deck, I think, and if it does happen to be tier 1 after all these other nerfs, I think that's just fine. Like, it's a good deck to be tier 1. It's not particularly toxic, it's got counterplay, games go back and forth a lot of the time. I think it's fine. Bit weird to nerf this weapon. It's not been a particularly strong weapon until right now, and I don't think it's like particularly crazy as a balance outlier, and it's not a feels bad weapon to play against either particularly. So bit of a strange one to be nerfed, but maybe they're anticipating with these other changes Hunter maybe gets a bit too good, so they're going to change this one. Are they going to make it 7 mana? Maybe. They could also make it like a 3/2, I guess, or something like that. One of those 2 things. 7 mana seems very, very harsh for it. It's already quite expensive at 6. Yeah, those are the nerfs. I mean, I think fine. I would have kind of liked to see Solid Alibi be nerfed as well because it's just an unfun card to play against. But I think mainly they've picked the decent ones as nerf targets. Paladin was obviously way too strong. Lady Steno was a bit toxic. They're the main ones. I didn't really feel the need to nerf Posit, but I'm not against it anyway. I'm kind of against the Hunter nerf, but it might work out for the best. We've got some buffs as well for some underperforming mini set cards, which honestly looked terrible on evaluation before they came out, and they were terrible when they came out. We have Rhythm Dancer Risa, 5 mana 3/5. Right now, this card's way too expensive for both Rogue and Demon Hunter. Doesn't have enough impact on the board. So how are they going to change this? Probably reduce the mana, for starters. They could also change the stats to like a 5/5 for 5 as well. That's pretty reasonable too. If they make it a 5/5 for 5, it can clear actually some good minions each turn. And maybe it becomes a bit better as a control tool. Other than that, just make it 4 mana. Is it going to be good after that? I don't know. Kind of doubt it. I don't know if Rogue really needs it. Also, I think a lot of Rogue decks don't actually have the weapon up going into turn 4 because of the concoctions and all these things. Secrets as well. If you're playing a slower Rogue, often take up your mana instead of the dagger. So it's not even going to be like that easy to have this ready to go if it was a 4 mana one. But it's a step in the right direction. I don't know. Not too hopeful. For Demon Hunter also, I don't think they really need to play this card. We got Remixed Dispenso Bot as well. The Fridge getting buffed. Gains an extra effect in your hand that changes each turn. Yeah, just too expensive, this card. Probably make it cheaper. 3 mana 3/3. Or make it a 4 mana 4/5. Probably 3 mana 3/3. Honestly, just make it a 3 mana 3/4. Why not? Make it so people actually want to play it. I feel like if there's a 3 mana 3/3, it's still not going to see play. But maybe a 3 mana 3/4 would. Fiddle Fire Imp, Battlecry, add a random fire and mage and fire warlock spell to your hand. They can make this one a 3/4 because the pool for this is terrible. The spells you get are really, really bad. So as long as that's the case, you need a really good reason to play this. So really maybe make it a 3/4, or maybe make it 2 mana. Then people would play it. But that, would it be too strong at 2 mana? Maybe it would be, actually. Maybe they're just going to make both of these 3 mana 3/3s. 2 mana 3/2 that adds 2 things to your hand. Yeah, that is way too strong, actually. That's not going to happen. So it's probably going to be stat change. Make it a 3/4. Make this a 3/4. But if you're feeling too scared to do that, they're probably going to be 3/3s. What do you guys think about the nerfs? Predictions? Are there anything else that you would have liked to have seen changed that they've missed? Let me know in the comments. Likely the case that the patch will be coming on Thursday, and then we can discuss the actual changes then and see how we did. Thanks for watching, guys, and see you in the next video. Bye!